finally wrapped up Stranger Things. And I plan on doing more of a series deep dive and season ranking in a future episode. But for the purpose of this episode, I'm going to be talking specifically about season 5 and kind of what I liked and didn't like. And it does have some issues for sure. I didn't feel like it really earned the longer runtime with some of the episodes, and it felt like there was a lot more like fluff going on that kind of seemed unnecessary to me. It felt like it was kind of over explaining and kind of making the lore even more convoluted. And, I understood it basically as best as I could, but I'm not the only one that said this, that I think as they went along with Stranger Things, they kind of made it more confusing than it needed to be, if that makes sense. Just because there's something about like the simplicity of like the first season, especially to where like it was a lot easier to kind of see what the rules were and follow along of, the story. And then it kind of lost some of the vibe of like the 80s horror feel that it had before. It kind of felt like a science fiction, like, 30 years into the future kind of setting to me. And it felt like season 4, especially the ending of it, like the final episode of season 4 would have been a better closeout than what we got, because I felt like the final battle should have actually been in Hawkins, like, and it have like these high stakes and like the world is about to end. And they keep saying that, but it doesn't really feel like it, because like they'll say, oh, we got to do this and we got to defeat Vecna because the world's going to be destroyed and he's going to destroy Hawkins at least first and then split the world in 4 parts. But then they go into these long monologues for like 15, 20 minutes, especially when you have moments to where you have Max and the younger Wheeler sister that was trapped there, and they have this whole monologue, and it should really just be like a quicker thing and be like, both of them sprinting and be like, you got to go and do your own thing, go your separate way. That's all they had to say. But then they drag it out and do a 10-minute thing, and then sometimes it's like the portal closes and it's like, of course they wrote it that way. It just seems stupid. Like I said, it's like it's building stakes and building tension, but then it just falls flat because they choose to like get into these whole like philosophical like discussions and stuff and all these things. Like, it's not the time or place. Or even like, I thought it was a good moment, like Will's coming out, but it's just they chose a bad time for it, because like, first of all, I don't mean to be rude about this, but it's like it was kind of implied like from the very first season of, Will being gay, but like there wasn't a way really to work that into the show in that first season. But it's like it could have been mentioned in like season 2 or 3. Not that that has to be all that his character is about, because clearly there's, more depth to him than that, and there should be. But all I'm just saying is that like we pretty much basically knew that, and it just seems like such an afterthought that it's like finally into the 5th season that it gets confirmed. Like, I realize like, yes, he had internal conflict of dealing with that and feeling like, he would be rejected by family and friends, especially with it taking place in the 80s, but then he's ultimately accepted. But the time that he talks about that and has this conversation with everyone, and especially even with people that he had never even really talked to or interacted with before, it just seemed kind of out of place. And especially like when they need to be hauling to get to the Upside Down and to deal with Vecna, and to where Will has this whole monologue about his coming out, which again was a good moment, but it was just the time that they chose to do it was poor. That's what I thought, that it could have been a more impactful moment. And also too, it's like if they would have did it, let's say even like season 3 at the latest, we still would have had season 4 and season 5 that, maybe we could have had some more dynamics with that, of maybe he would have had a boyfriend, or maybe like they could maybe talk more openly about some stuff, or how Will expresses himself. It seems like Will is either like very shut off from the world, and obviously, yes, I know he was taken into the Upside Down, or he was taken over by the Mind Flayer previously, so he's not himself. But even when there's none of that really going on, he's either just shut down, or he's having just some sort of like outburst that's way over the top. It's very much one thing or another, to where like we don't really get like a lot on the in between, and I just don't like his character as much as some others. Like, I don't hate him, I don't hate Will. And then even like when you think about back in the first season, like he was in the Upside Down for pretty much all of it. So it's like he's not even really there. Like, they're looking for him and he's like kind of the centerpiece of that, but yet he's kind of not, because he's not actually really doing anything. But anyway, back to, season 5 is that like, yeah, you have like this whole like buildup and everything in season 4, and then like, world's going to be taken over. And then they just put like sheets of metal over where like the ground opened up, then they just say it's like an earthquake, like it was nothing. Like, yeah, people, moved out of Hawkins and stuff, but it just seemed like it just wasn't as big of a thing as what there was building to. And if I would have did it, if I was to be, creating season 5, I would have built more on top of that, And maybe part of the reason could have been with like, writer strikes and other things going on and them being, you know, like so much time passing in between seasons and maybe rewrites and things. And it's also hard too because like, of the actors really in season 5, you notice like the difference in like how much older they look. I mean, I know they try to do the best they can, and Stranger Things is not the only show that this has happened to, and I'm sure, will happen again with other shows. I mean, I'm I don't know. I I feel like they kind of, bit off more they could chew, like the Duffer Brothers with this, or I guess like a better thing to say is with extending this story out into a 5th season. I feel like the well kind of ran dry and they were kind of more grasping at straws to where, as I said before, like season 4 would have been a better way to end it. Yeah, to where season 5, I did enjoy that there was, some good like action in it, and I really liked when they were trapping the Demogorgon to track it, like when they trapped it in the house and stuff. It was very much like Home Alone kind of thing, and that kind of reminded me of moments in the very first season, and it kind of felt more like special to me. And it did kind of connect some long-standing mysteries that kind of came back around and the why behind everything. But on the flip side, there was like a certain mystique when we didn't know everything. Like it is something that like, Vecna was behind kind of everything and this and that from even the get-go. Even if you look at like episode 1 of Stranger Things, like of the very first season, like that kind of outline of that figure on the street does really look like Vecna. But then the Duffer Brothers be like, well, he wasn't even a thought then. And I don't know, they're kind of just really full of themselves, in my opinion, that they don't really make a lot of sense to me. Like clearly they did create a good show, but it's just like they don't really make a lot of sense, and they were definitely making it up as they went along. You can definitely tell in a lot of things and how they answer questions and stuff. And, I'm not saying that I would have everything put together, but it's just like it is your show, so it is what you make it, and you don't have to be so like, well, actually, so I don't really get that. But I did find that Lucas was a stronger character in this season. I did enjoy him a lot, and I liked Max's inclusion. I think it would have been more powerful if they actually would have killed her off, because that is another gripe that I have with Stranger Things, is that like they really don't kill anybody off. It's like, I know they don't want to make people upset and mad, but it's like that raises the stakes and makes it feel more real if actually people get taken out. Like, I know these are all lovable characters and they are really well written, but that's like a problem at the same point, is that like you can't ever move forward. And then even with like the very ending of it, I thought that in like the final showdown, it was cool and it meant a lot that Joyce was the one to, slay Vecna after like all she went through and the torment and everything. That did mean a lot. But besides that, she was a very back burner character, to where especially in the first like couple seasons, she was great. She was a standout. And really, especially in the first season, she was just a distraught mom, and you really felt for her, for her journey and trying to find her son. And then, now in the 5th season, she's just such a side character. And then, Hopper shouldn't even really be alive, and he didn't really feel like himself, because like I liked the stuff to a point, like with him in prison in season 4, but it's just like even that stuff wasn't really the same, to where like, seasons like, 1, 2, and 3, he was probably my favorite character for sure. I still love Hop, I do, but he just, I don't know, he wasn't really the same in 4 or 5, because 4 he's in the prison, then in 5 he just kind of was just there, it felt more like, or he was just kind of being an idiot, like I know he was in the Upside Down trying to help Elle and trying to figure things out, but I don't know. And then I didn't really like Dustin as much, just because he was such an angrier like character. I mean, I guess rightfully so, just because like with losing Eddie, he took that really hard. And so that was something. And I still really like Steve a lot. I thought that was good. Robin I really like a lot too, but then again in season 5, she was put on the back burner as well, and it was just really a waste of Maya Hawke's talents and her character there. So I felt like that was kind of a shame that she was put on the back burner. And then again, back to the final battle, is that like I really thought that it should have been in Hawkins, or that it should have been in the Upside Down, not in just like whatever that other realm is. Like, just kind of felt stupid to me. So they're just in this like huge desert thing. Like it was kind of interesting in a way that like the Mind Flayer, like which just looked like the stone spider thing, that it came alive, but it didn't really feel like it was that much of a battle, to where like the battle at the end of season 3 was more intense than the end of season 5, so just it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And also too that they should have had like the, demogorgons and bats and the demodogs, and it's like, why didn't they have all the bells and whistles going for this? Like that's really what it should have been, in my opinion. And I know a lot of other people have said that too. It just that's the thing. It's like they build up the stakes and then it's like it doesn't really like deliver. But I will say on more kind of, positive notes, I did like how ambiguous it ends, and especially like what people are saying that like, maybe actually Vecna did win because then, in the basement there's like the what's it games and then different things like that and little clues or how everybody's sitting at, graduation, or then even like Elle's ending is up in the air if, she actually got taken out or not, or if it was, Cotty just sending like a vision to everybody to think they saw her and maybe she slipped out somewhere else. So it is kind of interesting that you have an open ending. I never really bought into like the conformity gate thing, but I think it is interesting. I know I kind of talk negatively about the Duffer brothers writing, but I think, clearly it has to be strong enough to intrigue people to be like, oh, there's more and look at these clues and stuff. I don't think they did anything of that on purpose. I think that was just, there's some smart fans figuring those things out. But is that like, you just want people wanting more and more? And I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of follow up to this in the future. I know there's the animated series coming out. uh, But that just kind of takes place between seasons 2 and 3. But I wouldn't be surprised if like in 10, 15 years or so, or maybe even 5, like if they picked up with some sort of sequel, I'm sure they could figure something out. But I was glad to finally be along for the ride and to check this out. And now I get why it's so beloved. And it was still a solid show overall, like even with its flaws, like it was still pretty good. And, I do like and care for a lot of the characters. So I get that it's hard to, kill them off. But I just feel like, some stronger, better decisions could have been made. And the basement scene was just such a good, like, wrap around to the final ending and leaving it up in the air and being like, was it actually just a D&D campaign, or are they actually in the Upside Down still in Vecna 1 and they just don't know it? And that's what, the kids are imagining that they won, but really Vecna did. And I did like that it was kind of more psychological, or also like Vecna, kidnapping the kids and taking them all in. That was like a cool element to that. And it seemed like a bit more of like a play with your mind kind of thing. And then looking for things that are out of place, like the things that should be like a different color, but a gray, like on the tilt-a-whirl thing and stuff like that. So again, it really kind of plays with your mind, like those elements like that. So I did like that. But again, of like where we were building to could have been a lot better payoff, and I still gave the season finale itself 3.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I thought it was, pretty good, but it could have been better. And I don't think it really needed to be that long, just because like once they even wrapped up like kind of the final battle and stuff, we still had like another hour of stuff. And I was like, it did not need to be that long. I could have seen like maybe like 20 minutes or a half hour to wrap up like the graduation and other things and stuff, but not like another like hour worth of like content, to get all these things put back together. It didn't really make sense. Maybe my thoughts will be a little bit more well constructed when I actually do like a series kind of breakdown or ranking, kind of more deep dive that. This is just kind of me, riffing of what I think. But, overall, I thought it was a decent season, not my favorite, not the absolute worst. I still say that, season 2 is probably my least favorite overall. But, none of these seasons are like awful or anything. Just some have, elements that I like more than others, and some have more of a charm. And, there's a lot of back and forth things with this. So, I'm kind of glad to see that the show is done, honestly. Like, it had a very good, successful run, and it, is hard to let shows go like this. Like, I don't have as much of an emotional investment because I, got on really late to the game and I just kind of binged it at the beginning of this year. But that was always kind of my plan from the get-go, is like once all the seasons were out there, then I would watch it, because with these, big waits in between, it just kind of seemed just stupid and, and annoying to me. And I was like, I'll just get on the train when everything's all there. So that's kind of what I did. So it's, fun to be on the up and up with the story and all that. Good show, and definitely one of my, favorites that I watched. And so I thought overall, decent, could have been better. But, I will come back to some of these thoughts when I do like a, series ranking of Stranger Things. But what did you guys think about season 5? Are you glad Stranger Things is done? Just because, like, to me, it seemed like there wasn't a lot left really to do with this story. And some of the, story choices weren't really the best. That's just me nitpicking. I'm no professional, screenwriter or anything. But We just all have opinions, and this is mine. What did you guys think of season 5 of Stranger Things? And what did you think of Stranger Things overall? Are you a fan? Have you been along for the ride, or did you just hop on recently and binge it like I did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Howdy. So recently, Texas Chainsaw Massacre has been acquired by A24, and I have some thoughts on this. I just want to say right out of the gate, I actually do like A24 a lot. They have more hits than misses for me, to be honest. Not everything lands with me, but not everything is going to, made by anybody. But I do like that they've taken a lot of, big swings and stuff, especially in the, area of horror. They make a lot of weird, kind of out there things, but I think somebody's got to take some chances and be experimental with stuff. And, they're kind of becoming more mainstream, but I figured that's kind of the way the cookie would crumble as they get more successful. They lean kind of more into the mainstream category. But I think they've really produced a lot of great stuff, and they have really seem to have a lot of good creative minds over there. And, I'm excited to see like what will happen with Texas Chainsaw. And I think this is just a good boost that it needed, because this franchise has had a lot of issues over the years. And I like Texas Chainsaw, but it's definitely not my favorite slasher franchise, but I have, always liked it. There's probably more bad movies than good. Doing a plan on doing a ranking of the films at some point. I do enjoy them, but they, have a lot of issues too and could be way better. It's just one of the classic franchises, and definitely like one of the faces of horror, Leatherface is. And, it does bother me sometimes when they mix like him and Jason up, and they'll give Jason a chainsaw, and it's like, no, he didn't really ever use a chainsaw. It's like he's, machete. And I was just like, I just say that because Jason's kind of more my like thing. Jason and Friday the 13th more than Texas Chainsaw, because like Texas Chainsaw, the original, obviously is a classic, and I love that. The sequel was kind of okay. It was kind of more of a dark comedy thing. It was very different. And I thought the reboot on Netflix was decent. I know a lot of people hate that. I actually did kind of like it. And the reboot from 2003 was really, really good. And I even like Texas Chainsaw 3D, which I know a lot of people hate, and it is goofy, yes, but there was just something about it that I still enjoyed. But I think the franchise is going to be steered in the right direction. I believe I heard that Glenn Powell is on board to be a producer for it. I don't know if he's really going to be acting in it at all, but I like him as an actor a lot, and he seems to be a smart guy. So I'm curious of what his thoughts are for what to do with this series. And it seems kind of more like a prequel series, but I hope that leads to a movie somehow. And I'm just curious what they will do differently. And I have a lot of good faith in A24. Again, like seem to be pretty creative people over there, so I'm sure they're going to offer us something really unique and different. And I'm glad that we're picking things up with this franchise again. That's the thing. It's just hard when franchises get into legal issues and stuff, or like rights are ending, and then they have to go through all like bidding on things and stuff, and it just makes you wish like people could just have it, and they have it, and then just keep making good stuff. Just because I kind of miss the heyday of when like so many of those franchises were just pumping out these movies. Yes, not all of them are good, not even just for Texas, but just like countless horror movies. Like, yeah, a lot of them are bad, but also too there's a fun aspect where like just kind of shut your brain off and not think about it so much. So there's a beauty to that. But anyway, just moving forward, I'm happy to see that Texas Chainsaw got picked up, and that we're going to be having, more content coming out with that, and that A24 has it. And I think they're going to do a good job. And what are your thoughts about this? Would you prefer another studio get in charge of this, or are you okay with A24 having the rights to Texas Chainsaw? What do you think? Let me know. I picked back up with School Spirits on Paramount Plus, which I've talked about this previously, and I have some thoughts. They kind of flipped the script a bit to where, like, Maddie was now back in her body and back in the real world with everyone. But then, Simon is trapped in the ghost world, but it wasn't, just his soul. It was his body as well. So that was kind of a unique thing. And then peeling back the layers to find out that, there's deeper, more evil levels to the school, and then that kind of links up to like how like the town was created and like the horrible things that happened. I thought that was kind of cool. And then a little bit further explanation into the character's scars. I thought that was better done in season 2. with the expansion and adding in more characters like Charlie's boyfriend and stuff like that. I did like that Quinn became more of a better character this season, that there was a little bit more to her. And Rhonda was kind of coming out of her shell a little bit more. And I really do like Wally's character a lot, you know? I feel like he's becoming a stronger role in the show here. And I thought it was interesting that like the teacher came back into the fold, like they had falling out with him, obviously, because what happened previously in season 2. So I thought it was interesting that he got back on kind of a better page with the rest of the students there. So I thought that was good. I like Xavier's character, and I like that they explored more of him being able to, you know, see spirits and stuff. And I like the inclusion of Maddie's dad. I thought that was good. And then I thought it was interesting too, the addition of the Kyle character, then finding out who actually, you know, stole his body and like the whole thing behind that, then to come to find out that, you know, that relates to the beginning of the town and then the church under the school. I didn't really care for Maddie's like friends as much, like Nicole and, you know, her other friend. I'm just not like huge fans of their characters. I liked them a little bit more in season 2, to where they kind of still had a little bit more kind of sass to them, and you weren't as aware of kind of all their things, to where now it feels like we almost might know a little bit kind of too much about these characters. You know, I did feel like I said Xavier was an improvement on his character, and I like him more and more. And I thought Peyton List playing Maddie was still a very good job, and you know, Maddie's mom was still decent. It just makes me wonder too, like where else they can go with this story. You know, read that the writers, you know, have written the story so they don't write themselves into a corner, like kind of from the very get go, or like at least when they start writing a new season. But, you know, I thought it's interesting that it flips this. You know, I was glad that, you know, Maddie's mom kind of finally got filled in on all the stuff, and then it seems like she more so believes. She definitely believes because of where, like, you know, season 3 ends off. And then now, like, you know, Van Height is in Maddie's mom's body. And then there's going to be a whole thing of trying to get her mom back. So I think that will be kind of cool to see. But after that, it's just like, I don't know what else you can really do, because otherwise it feels like it's just going to be repetitive of like body swapping with, you know, people in Split River. So I don't know how much you can really do with that. So I feel like this show is going to go like another 2 seasons at most, but maybe I could stand to be corrected. I enjoyed it and I still have a good time overall, but there was just something kind of more special that captured me about, you know, season 1 and season 2. And, you know, I thought season 3 was kind of okay, but I can see how they could do better with a 4th season. And I would not be surprised if it got picked up for a 4th season, which will probably happen within the next like couple weeks, because it would seem pretty on pace for what's happened for renewals with Paramount Plus shows. So I wouldn't be surprised if we got a School Spirits season 4, 2027. Overall, you know, thought it was decent. Was not as into it as the couple seasons before, but you know, I see them still doing unique and interesting things, and you know, this is very much its own thing as compared to a lot of other stuff I've seen. And it's not like it's a Stranger Things ripoff or it's very similar to this or that. It has pretty good writing and good drama elements, and you know, not a lot on the, you know, horror, because it's more on like the, you know, relationships and the emotional aspects in that drama of what, you know, they're going through. Like that is, you know, terrifying in the same way, but it's not like it ever gets like that scary. But that's not what this show is. So overall, I, you know, thought it was pretty good. Kind of getting a little bit burnt out on it, but I'm sure I'll just keep watching it as long as they keep putting out seasons. Have you guys seen School Spirits season 3? You know, are you familiar with School Spirits at all? Do you have any thoughts of giving it a shot if you have not seen it? Let me know in the comments. I got a chance to check out the Being Eddie documentary that delves into Eddie Murphy's life and career. Honestly, I didn't really know a ton of background information about Eddie Murphy beforehand. I knew some like quick beats kind of here and there, but it was really cool just to get to his story. I think it could have been a little bit more in depth, just because it does seem kind of one-sided, because it never paints him negatively at all. And like some other people said in reviews, that it's kind of more of like a puff piece, which I kind of agree with it, though. It doesn't really get into much of the negatives as much with him. Again, too, just kind of peeling back the layers, I guess, more of his childhood that I didn't know about so much, or about, you know, his, you know, dad working for like an ice cream company and things like that. Or I knew he started stand-up very young. I knew that, but I didn't know like a ton of other details. It's just crazy, like, to think about, like, for like his, you know, couple of specials that he did, like Delirious and Raw, that he was like early 20s. Like, I think like Delirious, he might have been like 21, which is just crazy, because like, you know, now and even back then, there's a lot of comedians that it's like they didn't get their first special till they were like 30, or sometimes even older. That just shows a lot, like for, his comedic chops and just how talented that guy is, that he was just bringing the heat even from like back then, because he started doing stand up when he was 17, that he was just working and working on that stuff. And he got SNL and he was like, I don't know, 18, 19 or something. And so just very young, and to get that success and to be like that talented and was rightfully earned, just because like, I wish he still did stand up today. Like, he's not my favorite stand up comedian overall, but I've always liked Eddie Murphy, even from when I was a little kid, just because like the way that he went from kind of doing like more raunchy and out there kind of comedies, like he did his stand up, and then he also got his movie career kind of going. Like, and he was kind of more like action comedy and kind of, mouthy like that. Then he transferred to being more like family friendly movies like Shrek, and then like Daddy Daycare, so that he's still like been kept alive through generations, and that like he is able to engage better with how like times are moving. And he also did that too as he had kids and as they grew up, and then he was kind of making more content that they could watch and engage with. And a lot of people like from, my generation being Gen Z is like, Donkey was a great performance, and it still stands up to this day. His voice work in that, and Eddie's ability just to do so many different like characters and things, or even like look at The Nutty Professor, which I finally watched like a couple of years ago for the first time. I watched both those movies, and I thought they were really good and so funny. And the fact that he was taking just a big leap out there to play all those different characters, or even in Coming to America, like in The Barbershop, he plays those other characters like through, makeup and prosthetics. And you really even forget that that's him, just because he is so talented that he makes you like, forget, and you escape into the other characters that he's playing. So they feel even more real. And, that guy really, the world is his oyster, and he could really do anything. And even to the fact that like he did like that he did some music, and that, Party All the Time is a good song. I don't really know any of his other musical work that he's done, but the fact that like he did that just as kind of like a, fun thing. And, that he did well with that. And, yeah, immensely talented. He should definitely be like studied in school, or definitely in, entertainment classes of some sort, or like arts colleges, because he is a once in a lifetime. Like, he's not my number one like favorite comedian of all time, but I really did enjoy Delirious. I thought that was a great special, and I thought Raw was pretty good. I think there's a lot of people that liked Raw like a little bit better, but I like Delirious better personally. But then, yeah, the fact that he's been able to have such a body of work. Yes, not everything was great of like the work he made. Like, obviously there's going to be some dud movies for anybody, but that happens. But the fact that he was willing to take big risks and big swings, and do all sorts of different things, that he has not put himself like in a box to only play this type of character or this type of role, that he's done so many different things across the board. And that's one of the things he, said. He's like, I've probably so much more different stuff than anybody. And I really agree with that, just because like I don't see anybody else, playing like 4 or 5 different characters, or, knocking it out of the park with doing voiceover work. And I don't know, such a creative guy, and I love that, just how his mind works. And then even too, he said he's done doing stand up basically, just because like he moved into doing more movies, and then like of how like kind of the, social climate is. But, he really could rock it if he put his mind to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if ever someday, if he got the, itch to go out and do it. I realize it's a lot of work, but he's just, a true comedian in my opinion, that he is, dedicated to the craft. He doesn't call himself a comedian. I guess that's kind of fair, just because like he's just Eddie, and Eddie is Eddie, that like he can do anything. And that's, again, goes along the lines of like not being put in a box. And I respect that it's like, I'm not just defined by, this one thing. I can be anything I put my mind to. And, if he ever was to go back to stand up, I would be really happy to see that. If he did like one last special as a hurrah, I could, really see him doing very well with that, if he chooses to do so. Because it was kind of funny at the end of the documentary, he has like the Richard Pryor puppet and the Bill Cosby puppet, because he was kind of joking around. He's like, that's the only way I would do it, if I had, those couple of puppets and stuff, then could interact with each other. And then then there he has them. So it's kind of almost like leading up to like, is he or isn't he going to do something with that? But I think it was more just kind of of a bit that like, just to mess with us, the audience. But, yeah. In closing, I thought it was pretty good doc overall. Yes, it could have been more in depth and kind of shown like the other side of the coin of when things got ugly a little bit more, that it was kind of a little bit too polished in my opinion for a documentary, but still enjoyable overall. I think I gave it a 3.5 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. But yeah, I thought it was a cool doc. So if you're a fan of Eddie Murphy, if you're a fan of comedy, go check that out. If you like his movies, and if you have checked it out, did you like it, or what are your thoughts on that? So let me know. I finally got a chance to watch Aaron Rodgers' Enigma, which is a documentary series on Netflix. It consists of 3 episodes, and I think they're about an hour each, quite different than other things I've seen. But I thought it did a good job of telling Aaron's story, and it kind of was interesting that it would go back and forth between things to where it would be like what he was dealing with the present day as it was being recorded. Like he was dealing with his, Achilles injury and that rehab of that and trying to make a comeback. But and then it would cut to like, him being on the Packers still or him being in college. And I knew some of the highlights. I knew that he was passed over and he went lower than he thought he was going to in the draft when he thought he was going to be going to the 49ers, or at least some other teams for sure, because I know he grew up in California and was a Niners fan, and that he kind of got passed over. But I didn't know all kind of the things he went through and like his upbringing and kind of being like a nobody. I just thought that he was a, pretty good quarterback from the get-go, like in high school and stuff, but I didn't realize that he was, still like such an outsider and people didn't really think much of him and he really had to prove himself. And that he's just, been so motivated by that and, others being kind of cruel and hard on him, and that's, really driven him. And then I also thought it was like a cool aspect to see how, like the journey he's kind of went on, to become the person he is, just because like, I know in recent years he's been a lot more divisive, whether it be like, with during the, pandemic and stuff and, choices he made and what he said. Uh, or journeys he's went on, and retreats and things, and a lot of people think he's just a nut and just a weird guy, but personally I like Aaron quite a bit, and maybe he does come off as arrogant more than he used to where I just thought he used to be just a fun like cool guy and stuff and really good football player, and he still definitely is a great football player, one of the best of all time in my opinion, and I actually think he's better than Favre, to be honest. But you know I kind of still I side with him, honestly. Like I don't live or die by everything he says or choice he makes, but I say good for him for like expanding his mind more and working through a lot of things and actually taking the time to put in that work, because like a lot of us don't do that. And I think there are many different outlets and practices and ways we can work on ourselves, and that he's actually tapping into some of that stuff. So I think it's kind of ignorant for us to call him a nut when we don't know, or call him crazy when he's doing things that we don't know, like getting into different, like I said, type of, healing practices and all this different stuff and alternative medicine. I'm like, again, I'm not saying that it's 100% like the answer, but I'm just saying, if we don't try, we don't know. And at least he's, trying, and he does what works for him. So I thought it was really cool kind of seeing his journey, and then where it left off, it was at a, good point, I thought, and kind of an open door. I mean, obviously I know after the documentary finished that he's played a couple seasons with the Steelers, but it's still interesting to know that it's up in the air, like if he will continue to play or not at this point. But he's had a really great storied career. And, I've still been a big fan of him really since day one. And, he's just got an incredible story. And I think he's been a really great athlete, and it seems like he's a really good guy to be around and is a great teammate, and a great person when you really get to know him. I think people, and especially like the media, painted him in a bad light, and I think it's great that he's being able to really show who he is and get fair representation, because I think he got a bad rap, like quite unfairly, with a lot of stuff. Like, we all do things here and there, but it's nice that he actually has a chance to be able to, kind of show what was the actual truth with things. So I appreciate that a lot. And I really do relate to him being kind of more of an open-minded and free thinker. And that's kind of more the way I try to be and try to carry myself. And I want to be even more so, because I don't, believe in cutting myself off from, from other people and other things. And even if I'm, a bit apprehensive to it, I think it's good just to give it a shot and to give things a try. And, I see him doing that. So overall, I thought it was a, really good documentary. I do like sports and I, played sports growing up and I still, enjoy some of that stuff. I'm into it as much as I was, but I really do like a good sports movie or good sports documentary, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I enjoyed it. So if you're a fan of Aaron, fan of the Packers, if you're a football fan, I think you'd really enjoy this documentary a lot. And again, it's only a few hours, so, not too bad to get through. And one kind of flows into another pretty good. It doesn't really feel like a, big daunting task to sit through it all. I didn't do it in one sitting. It was over a couple of days, but, I liked it a lot. So Aaron Rodgers Enigma, 4 out of 5 on my Letterboxd. Go check it out if you haven't. Let me know if you have any thoughts or comments about Aaron Rodgers and, if you'd be interested in watching his doc or not. Let me know.